This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Radio Show and Podcast. Today we're going to be doing a very special show. As you all know, we will be hosting a seminar on June 3rd. What's next? A lost decade or 1% interest rates? This is billed as Bruce's last seminar. With me today is Bruce Norris, real estate investor. No, I'm just kidding. You guys all know who he is. All right, Bruce, let's get into it. Bruce, I've been getting a lot of emails and calls and questions, and the one they're really asking about is this really your last report?
I think so. Because I think that this is a longer term trajectory of what I see. So I think that's probably true. There's another thing. You remember I talked about this one time, going into a bookstore and actually writing down the titles of all the categories in the whole bookstore. And I was thinking about, okay, what have I earned the right to write anything about for my fellow human being, honest to goodness? And so this has been one category that I feel like I have been able to share something of value with my fellow human being. I want to figure out what the next category is, to be quite honest with you. And I don't know what that is. But I've given this one my all, and it's been a delight. And I guess, God, you never know. It could be something I see, go, oh, I have to say that.
Well, the follow-up question I keep getting after that is really his last report. Is he really retiring?
Yeah, and but I want to have another passion. And so I've really thought about, really trying to think about what's next. One of the things that I'm passionate about is speaking. So I would continue to do that because I just get a big kick out of it. And it doesn't have to be about statistics. Anybody knows when I speak, there's stories and there's experiences that I had as a property buyer and interacting with people, sometimes with their lives at stake. And, when you really realize that, you realize you can teach other people to be aware that this is more than just the house buying business. That was why the speaking was a passion to me, because I had that experience so early on that it was very rewarding to not just think about how much money am I going to make on the deal as it was. I could look across the table and see a person in distress and see if I can get them past, this is a permanent state for you, So I really enjoyed that. And that's what I think maybe that's what I brought to the property buying business, is maybe a cleaner, better view of how to conduct the business. The charts, that just came about because I was an investor that flubbed up. Honestly, I had that thing going on in 1988 where I had a chance and buy a bunch of lots and made $1 million in 6 months. And I just thought, this is the coolest thing ever. So let's build 7 custom homes in 89, get done with them in 1990, and basically gave it all back. And that was the first time it dawned on me real estate could hurt. And then, the example of Aaron's car, I buy him a Honda Civic, and then a couple of days later buy a 3-bedroom house for less. And you go, okay. And I really just wanted to understand the cycles. And I figured somebody else had figured it out. Honestly, I didn't ever intend to write a word on this thing. I intended to find out who wrote it. And I didn't find it.
That was actually going to be my next question, is what gave you the most satisfaction in your journey? And you kind of answered it. And so let me rephrase my question is, do you feel better about helping people that you were buying from, or our following, like our clientele, like your fellow investors?
I loved both. Now I haven't sat across from an owner for a long time because our business model changed. So that's been a long time since I've done that. It's interesting about the business model that we have is that it does change. So there's times where you buy directly from people. There's times that you're buying REOs. And ever since that REO patch, we bought at trustee sales with Greg at the helm, and we built houses. And so that's what's nice about having different skill sets in this business. But definitely both have been great passions, but I get the biggest kick out of helping. I was on food stamps at one time. I wanted to help that guy. I wanted to help us I wanted to create heroes for families. That's a fact. It never occurred to me until I saw an example, last year when I was speaking in front of that big group of real estate investors. What is the name of their group?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot. I don't remember.
That's okay. I'll think of it while I'm talking about it. Yeah. These guys,
the collective genius.
So they spent big bucks to be part of this group. And I was there as their keynote speaker. And I observed something that was inspiring. They had a guy that's got up and said that he was involved with helping kids get out of the sex trafficking racket. And on the spur of the moment, the guy that was in charge, he said, let's see if we can raise some money for him. By show of hands, each finger's $1,000. A few minutes later, 340 grand was raised. Jeez. And I'm getting a little emotional because I got emotional then. I thought, this isn't a real estate meeting. Mm-hmm. You guys are teaching each other to be heroes for your family. I mean, how cool is that? And so, yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to share what worked for me, got me out of the hole, and then made me, financially successful. And, there was always the pull to be in a bigger direction because of, Aaron, when he created those documents that were so great. The guy that was a promoter that was teaching people to run to the back of the room, when I hated that model, he said, well, at least send me your materials. And I think we wrote this in the promo piece. At least send me your materials. Let me help there. And it was the best recording. It really was one of the best recordings ever. He said, Bruce, I got your materials. Oh my God. In other words, there's nothing like this. Yeah, I know. And do I want to go to Wall Street? No. I just want to help the guy like me.
I just had a conversation yesterday with one of the founders of Phoebe. And, he was just like, man, I don't understand how you guys don't have a 5,000, attendee limit, because this should sell out immediately and everybody in the world should be at this event, and a matter of fact, we don't promote, we're very strict about no sales, nothing, but send me something because I need to get something out to all of Phoebe saying, hey, this is the do not miss event this year, and it was somebody that you've spoken to, for years. And he's like, man, Bruce has been so generous with his time, his knowledge, that this is the least I can do is just send an email or a promo. I'll put on my LinkedIn, whatever you need me from me, but that's the kind of impact that you had on our clientele. And it really does feel like a family reunion whenever we do these things.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It is. I love seeing that. Matter of fact, you have people trying to get okay, I hope he comes because he's going to sit over here with me and all that. It is. It's a lot of fun. It's so rewarding. The last 15 years has really been challenging for our industry because big money has shown up. So, this was in 2009. I was invited to a 3-hour dinner with the 10 largest hedge funds in the world. And that was an interesting meeting. First of all, I really didn't know what a hedge fund was. That was the truth. And so I said that to him. I said, be honest with you, I don't know what you guys do, what hedge funds do. It was probably the best thing I could have done because honestly, it made them at ease knowing that I wasn't there to BS them.
Sure.
But they offered me a lot of money and I didn't want it. And about a year later, I'm speaking. Yeah, maybe it was almost the same year. I was speaking in front of a big crowd and a guy comes up to me and he says, I said, I love your company, love what you guys stand for. He said, I really feel sorry for you. And I said, really, why is that? He says, well, there's no way you're going to be able to stay in business with Wall Street as competitors. And what kicked off in me, that pissed me off inside. So I reached for a business
card. That was a Pomeroy moment.
That's right. I reached for my wallet and wrote wrote down my phone number, handed him a card, and I said, call me in 5 years. I guarantee you I'll pick up the phone.
Before we get going on talking about some of the things that we're going to talk about that Saturday, I wanted to ask, who do you like in the education space right now?
Oh, it's oddly enough, I haven't been to almost any real estate trainer stuff. Who I respect is who we've given the Roni Awards to. That group of people is unselfishly given of themselves. That's why they have the award, because it reminds me of what Jim Rohn did for me. Now, it's specific to real estate, but if somebody's holding that award, it means that their reputation is just unbelievably great. And that's what that's about. It's unselfishly giving to your fellow investor. So, it's kind of cool that there's a pack of Florida people that have that trophy, because they've always been kind of the all-stars that were invited out to both coasts. And, just getting a chance to know them personally a little bit. It's been great, but that's where I would start, is with those people that have that reputation, and they don't need anything from you. I love that, they don't, but they teach for the right reason.
Now, you're gonna be meeting with Jonathan Gross this week at Fannie Mae. Now, he's listed as the VP of Pricing, Business Strategy, and Transformation. It's a little bit different. You're always, talking to the CEO or, Doug Duncan. What do you think this means about?
I don't even know if I'm the freedom to say.
I got you.
I know what it's about, but I don't know that I can say it. It's top secret, and I've got to keep it that way.
Will you be able to say about later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
At the seminar, I'll tell people why I went there.
Okay, that's a perfect little tease for this. So,
it's not a tease. It's the truth. I don't think I have the freedom to say that. It's sort of hush hush what they're planning, and I'm part of directing what they're going to do. How's that?
Wow. That's a huge tease. I don't mean that you're not going to deliver. I'm just saying it's a tease for being there on June 3rd. Like, you got to want to hear this. So
well, that isn't even why I said it. But, okay, that could be.
So let's talk about some of these chapters. I was looking at the whole chapter list today, and I wanted to talk about a couple of them. So the first one I wanted to bring up was the impact, inflation's impact on real estate.
Well, I was so fortunate. When I wrote the first report, I ran across this report from Cal Poly Pomona, construction report. And I didn't know what their clientele was, but it was every builder in California. And they had just the coolest set of statistics that weren't available anywhere else. So I had gone into the library and handwritten with a notepad, any topic I thought might be of value. I wrote it down, the history of the stat, and would make a chart of it later. But they had unusual statistics that no one else had, and it was really cool. And it kind of wrapped up my body of work for that time. Okay, Michael Carney was very generous, and I just really liked that he allowed me to look at the stuff and talk with me. So I sent him a copy of the report, and he invited me to speak in front of his clientele. I had no idea that was every major builder in California and the president of Fannie Mae and so forth. It was like crazy in the audience, and it was in San Francisco with my podium behind me was like a 40-foot piece of glass looking at the San Francisco bridge. But here I am telling them prices are going to double, and we're flat on our back and have been for 4 or 5 years. So everybody was happy I said it, but no one believed it. But at any rate, what happened then is I built a relationship with Michael Carney. Now, what I didn't know is he had a vault. Literally a lockable vault where he had old copies of this report going back to the 70s. And he said, I've never let anyone do this, but I think you might really find that interesting. So I go into the vault that nobody's ever been in.
You were like that kid at Willy Wonka.
I was, man. I was like, yeah. Well, what was so cool is somebody thought about, okay, why don't we trace the cost of the same home during the 70s inflation? And so they got the same plumber and supply cost for every category. It's great. So it really is this journey of the 70s inflation attached to a house that's being built and the labor process. It was awesome. And so, I mean, that to me, it was, and then of course, one of the things they also have is they have a median price for the existing home and a median price for the new home. Well, they intersect every once in a while where the existing goes more expensive. And it really taught me, gee, when I own a piece of real estate, I own a basket of commodities. My wall becomes more expensive than Lennar's. That just was so fun.
And so the stats there are a 7-year set, because that's what inflation, did in the 70s. So the new inflation was.
Well, wait a minute. They actually stopped doing the quoting of that house for after 77.
Okay.
So, but there were other charts that went all the way through the decade. So not to interrupt you, but anyway.
But what I was going to say is that now inflation, it wasn't a 7-year ramp up for us. This happened very, very quickly. And so we're actually going to be able to share some interesting statistic that jumped in those 18 months, right?
Yeah, it was so cool. I mean, you did such a good job. I handed you a page of here's the numbers, and you expanded into 20 charts that were so cool. I mean, honestly, that made my day yesterday. I was like, yeah, because, that's one of the things about when you write reports, there's going to be some categories that are the same because of necessity. They're going to have an extra year. Sure. But what you did was say, isn't that interesting? Look at what happened in an 18-month period of time to the cost of building a house. And I mean, parts and labor, basically, in different categories and permits and all that stuff. So no, that's a big addition. And I was so glad that you were able to do that in such a good visual, I got pretty jazzed when I saw that.
I was just, when I sent it, I said, oh man, I hope he loves this. I just spent 2 hours doing this.
No, it looks really good, but it also lends credence to the same process. You own a rental in 2020. By the time 2022 came, your walls kept up with Lennar's. Now it's cool.
Yeah. So one of the other chapters that we're going to talk about is the Fed policies and how they impacted banking.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that domino is over yet. I mean, if you look at my desk right now, honestly, there's about 3 feet of paper that I keep on printing reports, or you send me reports and I print them. Well, I just looked at a report. It's over my head, to be honest with you. And sometimes that's true, but it's a report from basically some mathematicians that got together and looked at the price damage to the mortgage sector. So you're holding a mortgage in your portfolio that pays 2.5% for 30 years. What's that worth in the open market? There's trillions of dollars of damage to the people that hold that paper. And that's what's starting to be a problem, is because people are being afraid and they pull out billions of dollars in a tight time frame. So if there's bad news about a bank, pull deposits. Well, then what happens is these banks, and we have a chapter about that in an actual watching at how it plays out, where if you're forced to sell one of those assets, so like a 10-year T-bill, 10-year T-bills were under 1% for a while. Well, as a bank, you're obligated to hold a certain percentage of very safe assets. So you put a whole bunch of money in that type of thing. Well, when 10-year T-bill goes to 3.5, what's your 1% 10-year T-bill? Because you're missing 2.5% a year, and it's 10 years long. It's a big hit. And I think when auditors came in, I think that was the problem. You're valuing this at face value, and it's not. And so, for an individual bank, tens of, maybe even more than that, tens of billions of dollars disappeared in value. and put them upside down. And, that's the thing. That's not over. That's one of those, we have the one chapter at the end, wild cards. That's a wild card. That is really a wild card.
And the last one I want to talk about is family budget. I think this is something that is on all of America's mind right now.
Yeah. Well, last year we talked about, well, here's the math. It's going to be, it could be a lot of damage. The one thing that might occur is people will stay in their home. Okay. So you really have two categories of people right now. You have people that own and they have a mortgage at 2.5% or 3%, or you don't. So it's going to be very interesting to see. So one of the things that we had to figure out is that group of properties is probably going to be more stationary than any group of properties ever, as far as owners, if they can stay there. So we know that history tells us that foreclosures are damaging to price if they get to be a certain participant. So we're assuming that's not going to happen this time. So what's the category of have to sell stuff? So there's a chapter about that. But one of the problems is the family budget is if you don't have a fixed loan on your house, you have a variable rate rent, right? Mm-hmm. All of us appreciate that. We can raise rent on you. Okay. And we have a lot. Okay. So we have that. If you have credit card debt, it used to be really cheap. Now it's not. You had student debt. There was a moratorium on payments for 2 or 3 years, and now it's not. So this budget has to go forward and buy a home at a 6.5% mortgage instead of a 2.5%. Well, that's what that chapter is about, is analyzing how many people are going to actually be able to afford the next house. And so that's one of the reasons we have a chapter of, we haven't even compiled it yet, is who's the buyer, because that's kind of a key, because there's going to be diminished demand because of just capacity. You're either going to maybe say, okay, now, I mean, everybody did this in the first time you bought a house. I rented a part of a duplex in Orange County. Well, I couldn't buy in Orange County, so I was willing to drive 40 miles to Riverside and work in Orange County. So that was normal. So I could buy a house in Riverside that was bigger than what anything I could afford in Orange County. Well, that's what people will do. They'll either, builders, you might see builders building 1,500 square foot homes again, where they go, okay, well, this is the price range that people can afford,
It makes me think that, the saying bang for your buck, like it's more like a thud for your buck now.
Well, it's because we're spoiled, that's a significant statement. We now think 5% mortgage money is expensive.
Yeah.
And
right.
and that's, part of me, when I do this presentation, I am going to take a little time talking about what happened when you were a participant at these levels, because I was, the whole time. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, real estate. Well, it took for me to be a full-time real estate investor. We had bought a home that was a deal, and then we fixed it really nice. There was a $5,000 loan on it that I didn't pay off because it was at 4.5%. And so I just had to leave it there. But then when I decided to become a full-time investor, I refinanced at 17.5. And, my payment was $1,260, I think, for 76 grand. And wow. What's pressure is when your wife is crying when she signs the loan docs. That's pressure.
Yeah, for sure. So, why do you think it's important for real estate investors in California to be at this event?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a journey through the history of what's happened. And to be honest with you, I think that we've done it better than anybody as far as figuring out when the turns come. So to me, that's really important, because you can get hammered missing a turn down, and you get very wealthy understanding that a turn up is about to occur. This cycle is different. It really is. We should have 40% plus hidden price. That's the math. So really that day is about, okay, so far, the 20 properties that Rick Solis has appraised all the time.
That was really interesting.
Yeah, that was really interesting. So we're not going to spill the beans on that, but that kind of surprised me in a way because, okay, that's interesting. To date, that's the damage. Okay. But that doesn't negate what could occur. You just need a big enough group of properties that have to sell. So there's a whole category that we're going to talk about. Okay, you could get unemployed, etc. So there's all kinds of categories that are going to tip into and add to the properties for sale. And if they have to sell properties in quantities that mimic the 90s or the 80s or 2006, well, you're going to have a very different result.
Well, and that catalyst could turn damage into a crash or something that would mimic a crash, right?
Yeah, that's all you need. Now, see, think about how little has to occur. Your sales volume in California, let's say during regular good years, 400,000. Well, now we're say 250 would probably be maybe where we're at. Well, if 40% is the point of significant damage starting, you only need 100,000 total houses out of all the inventory in California that says, I have to really sell. Well, if you have 400,000 sales, well, that's 160,000. So the smaller number of sales, makes you very vulnerable to problem categories, And so
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, well, that's my job.
Well, okay, so we're getting pretty close to that half an hour mark. I'm going to ask you the one last question, and the one that I wanted to tell you ahead of time. But can I get a raise this year? No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. All right, here it is. Are you going to make a prediction on June 3rd?
Absolutely, and I appreciate that question. Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to take a side. I'm also going to say some pretty stark things as I end that, because I'm thinking, okay, this is the last time. So some of those stark comments are not so much about real estate, and more about direction. And so it's interesting. You and I just discussed the cover.
Yeah.
And you wanted the light.
Can I share that? Give them a sneak peek?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, let me share my screen so they can see what we're talking about. Sorry, radio fans. Can you see it, Bruce?
I cannot. Oh, there we go. So Joey and my discussion was about putting the light on the right-hand side of the report, because that seems to be the positive result. And part of what I'm going to talk about is that we better look at the long term. We've got to hand something off to our kids where they have the same future as we do. We go to 1% interest rates, and I'm not saying we're not going to. I'm not going to tell you what my prediction is, but I'm hoping that we step in front of whatever we need to make sure our kids have a future that we had. That's for sure.
Well, I can tell you that my kids are really excited about being, homeowners and buying homes. They're planning on having, really, interesting careers. One's a pilot, the other one's going to be a doctor, but they're looking forward to the real estate side just because of, they see how, what impact Aaron had on my life, the impact that you've had on my life, and, and moving forward. So they all want to be landlords, and they all want to be real estate investors too.
I just never will forget the day when I cut my own grass for the first time. I mean, that memory can be very emotional to me, because when I write this report called The California Crash, and at the time I'm living in a $1.2 million house, knowing it's going to go down by half, and I don't sell it. And why would you not do that? Did that make any sense? Well, yeah, it did, because my priority was that inside of the walls of that house, I get to do whatever I want. That was more important to me than saving 600 grand. It really was. I sold that for 720, I think, and could care less.
Well, I just want to address a couple of things. We're getting a lot of emails, phone calls, and even in the chat today, folks that have vacations or, graduations, because it's around that time, they're asking if we're going to record and will the report be available? Absolutely, yes. We will be recording the whole day. You'll get access to it probably about a week later. We'll mail you the report that following Monday, so you won't get it ahead of time. But unfortunately, we will not be live streaming at the same time. There's just too much can go wrong, and we want to make sure that we focus on the folks that are there in the building and produce the best product that we possibly can. So there's going to be a great day, some interesting, like you heard from Bruce, and there's also going to be some news probably about the rest of the year for us and what it's going to look for the Norris Group going forward.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody, for being on. Really appreciate it, and we'll see. You guys can catch if you join late. We're going to put this on the radio show, so you'll see it this weekend probably.
All right.
All right, thanks, Bruce.
Have a great day. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.